Hello, freak bitches.
By the year 2040, it's estimated that 100% of the federal budget will go towards Medicare and Medicaid expenses, leaving nothing for anything else. Military,
By
education.
20 what?
2040.
What?
Talking about our lifetimes.
That's real?
That's real. That's if healthcare spending continues to increase at its current pace.
That's insane.
You're right.
That doesn't even make sense.
This is why the Department of Defense has named healthcare as an existential threat to this country. Just like, nuclear war or any other military threat, they've named chronic disease as an existential threat that could actually, threaten our survival as a nation.
Wow. Who ever thought of it that way? Who could have ever imagined that literally all of our budget would go to taking care of people's health by 2040?
Yeah.
That's not long.
It's not long.
That's 22 years from now.
Let me give you a few examples just to make this more clear. So the cost of treating a patient with type 2 diabetes is estimated to be $14,000 a year, okay? So we know now that 100 million Americans, that's like a third of the population, have either prediabetes or type 2 diabetes.
What?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
CDC just published these numbers. 100 million Americans.
That's insane.
Prediabetes or type 2 diabetes.
1/3?
1/3. And
that is, I'm having a hard time with this.
Yeah.
If you had just asked me, like, what percentage of Americans have diabetes, I probably would have said, like, 4%?
Yeah,
3%?
well, the percent who actually have type 2 diabetes is lower. But I said pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes.
Well, they're on their way.
Yeah, so
but a third.
So here are a couple other stats. 88% of people who have pre-diabetes don't know that they have it. And 88%. And the average amount of time it takes for someone to progress from pre-diabetes to full-fledged type 2 diabetes is just 5 years.
Wow.
So let's go back to that number, $14,000 a year to treat a single patient with type 2 diabetes. Imagine someone gets diagnosed at age 40, which is totally possible. I mean, now even 8-year-old kids are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And imagine that person lives another 45 years, which is also feasible because we have these, one of the amazing things about conventional medicine is the technologies that keep us alive probably a lot longer, than we should be. So let's say that person lives 45 years. We spend $13,000 a year, $14,000 a year treating that person. That's $630,000 to treat one patient with one disease over that patient's, remaining lifetime. Now, if you start doing some math and you assume, even 50 million people with diabetes times $630,000, you get a number with so many zeros after it. I don't even know what it is. It's like a Google or a Googleplex or something. So this is why we're facing this threat, and this is why I wrote the book. It's like people aren't aware that we're at this point where, like 1 in 2 Americans now has a chronic disease. 1 in 4 have multiple chronic diseases. 1 in 2
Americans has a chronic disease?
1 in 2. 1 in 4 have multiple chronic diseases. And I know you're a parent, and I am too. 30% almost of kids now have a chronic disease, and that's up from just 13% in 1994. So there's been more than a doubling of kids with chronic disease in less than 25 years.
How is that possible? What has changed in the American diet? Are you attributing it to the American diet that's caused that, or is it environmental effects
all
as well?
All of the above. So I would say it's the diet, it's an increase in sedentary activity, like sitting for very long periods, not moving around, not enough exposure to artificial, or not exposure to natural light, too much exposure to artificial light, not enough sleep, So all of these things come together. And now we've got a nation of people with chronic disease. And chronic disease is bankrupting our country. And it's extremely difficult to treat. It lasts for a lifetime. And our only hope, actually, of dealing with this problem and surviving as a country, as a nation, is to figure out a way to prevent and reverse disease instead of just suppressing symptoms and putting Band-Aids on it, which is what our current conventional medical system does.
You really scared me with that diabetes number. That's really freaking me out. I can't believe that.
Well,
what is this? What are you pulling up, James? More than 100 million Americans have diabetes or its precursor. Staggering CDC report reveals. And this is just from July.
Yeah.
Wow. In 2015, at least 1.5 million new cases were diagnosed in people over 18. It means that now a third of the U.S. population has diabetes or prediabetes.
Let me throw a couple others at you. The CDC just updated its obesity statistics. Now 40% of U.S. adults are obese.
Oh, my God.
40%. 4 in 10. Not just overweight, obese. And
40%?
40%. And almost 20% of adolescents are now obese.
Now, how are they basing this by those body standards?
Body mass index.
Yeah, but I'm obese then.
Yeah, it's not
that
perfect.
doesn't work.
It's not perfect, but it's not so imperfect that it's, we're talking about a 20% difference.
Well, look up body mass index, 5'8", 200 pounds. I think I'm like dying. I think like if you look at the body mass index, I think I'm like of terrible health.
But all you have to do is go to an airport. I just flew down here.
Right.
You sit in an airport and you look around. Those statistics are correct.
But there's also a lot of people that lift weights. Like there's a lot of people that are bigger. I would like to know what what am I, obese? Yeah, I'm obese. Come on.
Damn.
Come on, son.
But, I mean, look, but you don't have diabetes.
Well,
and you're not
I have 10% body fat, too.
Yeah, so
it's just not real.
Yeah,
that's not real.
It's not that, well, I don't know. I think that statistic, I mean, what do you think? Out of 10 people that you see on the street, are 4 obese?
Well, if I'm obese, now I know that I'm obese, right? According to that. Well, you got to throw that thing out the window. That's not a good metric.
It's not a perfect metric, but they have done studies where they have accounted for that, and you do see some variation, but you're not the norm. You're not, and you're an outlier.
I'm aware of that, but I think there's probably got to be quite a few outliers out there.
There are quite a few, but not enough.
More today than ever before.
Not enough to change that statistic in a really meaningful way. It's not going to, there aren't 20% of you. It's not going to drop that from 40% to 20%.
So maybe 40 to 35. Is that reasonable? Still a lot.
I think I would say maybe 40 to 39 or 38.
Jesus.
Yeah. So here's the deal. We can't. It doesn't matter who. So the whole recent healthcare debate with Affordable Care Act and then the current administration suggesting something different. That whole discussion revolved around how we're going to pay for healthcare, health insurance. But we have to understand that health insurance is not the same thing as healthcare. Right. It's a method. Right. It's a method of paying for healthcare. And my key point in the book is, it doesn't matter what method of health that we use to pay for healthcare, whether it's the government, whether it's corporations, or whether it's individuals. There is no method that's sustainable in the face of the rising rates of chronic disease that we're seeing. There's nothing that we can do.
What's fascinating is that I am pretty aware of this stuff, and I didn't know what you're telling me. I mean, and I'm stunned. I'm stunned at the number of people with chronic disease, and I'm stunned at the number of people that are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. I really don't know how to digest that. Yeah. That's horrific. And that could be attributed almost entirely to diet and a lack of exercise.
It's a preventable disease. That's the crazy thing. Type 2 diabetes is a fully preventable condition.
And type 1 diabetes varies in what way?
Yeah, it's an autoimmune condition, and it's strongly genetically mediated. So which means that it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have the genes, you're going to get the disease, but there's 50% of the risk, I think, is the statistic that I've seen of type 1 diabetes is genetic. Whereas we know now that 85% of the risk of disease in general comes down to environmental and behavioral factors.
Behavioral meaning your diet.
Yeah.